Imagine, you are standing in a grand ballroom in New York City. The year is 1928. The music is loud, the champagne is flowing freely, women are wearing sparkling dresses, and men are wearing sharp suits. Everyone in the room is celebrating. They are not just celebrating a party. They are celebrating a new era of endless wealth. People believe that poverty is a thing of the past. They believe the stock market is a magical engine that will only go up forever. You feel completely secure. You feel like the good times will never end. But you are standing on a fragile illusion. In just a few short months, the music will stop entirely. The wealth of an entire nation will vanish into thin air. Millions of families will lose their homes, their jobs, and their hope. This is the terrifying story of the Great Crash of 1929. It is the sudden, devastating end of the Roaring Twenties. After the end of the First World War, the United States entered a period of unprecedented economic growth. The factories were producing incredible new inventions. There were affordable automobiles, electric washing machines, and modern radios. The cities were growing taller, with massive steel skyscrapers. People had jobs, and they had extra money to spend. But more importantly, they had a new financial tool. It was called credit. For the first time in history, average citizens could buy expensive things now and pay for them later. This easy credit completely transformed American society. This new confidence quickly spilled over into the stock market. Before this era, only wealthy bankers and elite businessmen bought stocks. But in the 1920s, ordinary people wanted a piece of the action. Even shoe shine boys and taxi drivers were giving stock tips. The entire nation was gripped by a massive financial fever. They were borrowing money against their own homes to buy pieces of paper. Teachers, farmers, and factory workers started putting their life savings into Wall Street. The newspapers told them it was the easiest way to get rich. But there was a massive hidden danger in how they were buying these stocks. It was a risky practice called buying on margin. This meant a person only needed to pay 10% of the stock's actual price. The broker would happily loan them the other 90%. If the stock price went up, the investor made a huge profit and paid back the loan. It seemed like a perfect system. Everyone was winning. By the summer of 1929, the stock market reached record highs. People were borrowing billions of dollars to buy more and more shares. The market was completely disconnected from reality. Some smart economists began to sound the alarm. They warned that the massive bubble was about to burst. But the public completely ignored them. The greed was too powerful. The illusion was too beautiful. But in September, the market began to show signs of severe weakness. Prices started to fluctuate wildly. The smart money quietly started to pull out. Then came October. The panic slowly began to spread. On October 24th, a day known as Black Thursday, the illusion finally cracked. As soon as the morning bell rang, people started selling their stocks in a massive panic. The trading floor became a roaring sea of desperate men. They were screaming, waving their arms, and begging to sell their shares at any price. The ticker tape machines, which printed the stock prices, completely broke down because they could not keep up with the massive volume of trading. The paper tape spilled onto the floor in massive, tangled piles. The crowds gathered outside the New York Stock Exchange. They were terrified. A group of powerful bankers decided they had to stop the panic. They pooled their money together and boldly walked onto the trading floor. They started buying massive amounts of important stocks at high prices. They wanted to restore confidence. For a few short days, their desperate plan actually worked. The market stabilized, the weekend arrived, and people breathed a sigh of relief. But the fear had already planted its roots deeply into the minds of the investors. When the market opened on Monday, the selling started again. It was heavy and relentless. And then came Tuesday, October 29th. This day would forever be known in history as Black Tuesday, the darkest day in American financial history. On this terrifying Tuesday, the panic turned into absolute madness. Everyone wanted to sell, but absolutely no one wanted to buy. The prices fell like heavy stones. Fortunes that took decades to build were completely wiped out in a matter of minutes. The stock ticker machines were hours behind the actual trading. Investors had absolutely no idea how much money they were losing. They just knew they were ruined. Men who were millionaires in the morning were completely bankrupt by the afternoon. The brokers started demanding their margin loans back. They called the ordinary people and demanded cash immediately. But the people did not have the cash. They had to sell their homes, their cars, and their businesses just to pay off their massive debts. The entire financial system of the United States was completely collapsing upon itself. The physical scene on Wall Street was pure chaos. Rumors spread like wildfire. There were false stories of massive riots and wealthy men collapsing in the streets. The police officers had to link their arms together to hold back the massive, angry and weeping crowds. The shock was completely overwhelming. People wandered the streets in total disbelief. The magical engine of wealth had become an engine of absolute destruction. But the tragedy did not stop on Wall Street. The crash sent a massive destructive shockwave through the entire American economy. Because people had lost their savings, they stopped buying things. Because people stopped buying things, the factories had to shut down. Because the factories shut down, millions of workers lost their jobs. The most devastating blow came to the banking system. Ordinary people, who had never even bought a single stock, suddenly panicked. They rushed to their local banks to withdraw their hard-earned money. But banks do not keep all the cash in the vault. They loan it out when thousands of people demanded their money. At the same time, the banks completely failed. There was no insurance for bank deposits back then. If the bank failed, your money was simply gone forever. People who had worked tirelessly for 40 years found themselves with absolutely nothing but the clothes on their backs. Thousands of banks closed their doors forever. Millions of families lost every single penny they had ever saved. The Roaring Twenties were officially dead. The United States, and soon the entire world, plunged into a dark, desperate era. A time of immense suffering and profound poverty. Breadlines formed in the massive cities. Proud men were forced to beg for food just to feed their starving children. The booming metropolis became a landscape of despair. The government struggled to find a solution to the unprecedented economic nightmare. The foundation of the American dream was completely shattered. The crash of 1929 taught the world a very painful lesson about greed, illusion, and the fragile nature of money. It proved that wealth on paper can vanish like smoke in the wind. The nation would eventually recover, but it would take a massive global conflict to finally restart the massive industrial engine. But while the cities were starving, an entirely different kind of disaster was preparing to strike the heartland of the country. What happens when the fertile soil of a nation dries up and turns into a suffocating, moving mountain of dust? What happens when the sky turns completely black at noon, burying entire towns under oceans of dry dirt? In our next episode, we will travel to the American Midwest. We will uncover the ecological nightmare of the Dust Bowl and the desperate migration of millions trying to outrun the massive dust storms. Stay tuned, because sometimes the Earth itself decides to fight back. If you lost all of your money today, what is the first thing you would do to survive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and join us next time as we uncover the thrilling shadows of history.